this new week, we're happy to receive Liza Knowles, Senior Data Analyst for Office App. Hi, Liza. How are you?
Doing well.
Yeah, you're doing well.
Thank you. Yep.
Great. So today you're going to explain how to prepare for the real estate data era, and from your point of view, what is now the best time to begin the data journey. That's it.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Please, go on.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and start my presentation and share my screen. Just one moment. And are you able to see my presentation now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So thanks for the introduction. I'm really excited to talk about data today. It's really something I'm passionate about and truly exciting opportunities, I believe, within real estate. So there's been a lot of buzz lately, which you've probably heard about around data and potentially even artificial intelligence a lot in various fields, but especially in the real estate sector, it's no exception, and we continue to see this. And you might be part of an organization that has already been very data-driven and working hard to adopt the latest technologies and data practices, or maybe you've only used data for essential business functions. But either way, it can be very hard to determine whether the hype around certain data solutions should inspire, promote change within your organization, and if so, how to adjust. So today I'd like to take some time to provide advice for how to ensure that your organization is really prepared to get as much value out of the growing real estate data era. So a little bit of background about myself. My name is Lisa Knowles. I'm a senior data analyst at Office App, which was mentioned, which is a technology solution within commercial real estate, providing solutions, workplace solutions, for tenant engagement. So my primary role and responsibilities include building data-driven products to deliver to our customers. So this means turning the vast data points we collect in the workspace into valuable and insightful, and most importantly, actionable insights for our customers. In addition, I do work closely with all teams throughout our organization. So this is to ensure that all business is conducted with a data-driven approach. This means ensuring teams have the knowledge and resources to leverage data for decisions at any level. And that's really important to us, especially if we're ensuring our customers are data-driven, that we also practice the same. One thing I really like to focus on and what's called decision intelligence or decision science. So although we hear a lot about data science and data scientists lately, I really believe, especially within real estate, it's everything is highly dependent on experience and expertise. So decision science provides you with the information to make needed critical decisions when faced with uncertainty. So data, I believe, is really only valuable when it's paired with this experience and context. That's why a lot of times organizations will hire a data scientist and then not really know the best approach, or the data scientist doesn't really know where to start because they don't have the experience and context to back it up. In fact, when I first started at Office App, I spent the first few months really just conducting qualitative research and understanding the goals of my various constituents as the data that when I jumped into the data, I would only really understand it with that context. And when used appropriately, data can add immense value to your current strategy and be a competitive advantage. But again, I like to always make sure that it is paired with that experience and expertise. So why it might be a good reason to also begin your data journey. So again, you might already leverage data on a regular basis, but we do start to see emerging technologies. So there's a lot of disruption, and technology is growing at an exponential rate and will continue to disrupt all industries. So the reason this disruption can be valuable, though, is it does force us in a way to find ways that legacy processes and business practices can be optimized through innovation. And the results really do show immense value. So there are already plenty of available solutions that can almost immediately add value in the data space. And adopting these sooner rather than later will ensure you're able to quickly adapt in the future to change as we see more value delivered through technology. In the same vein, the emerging workforce is also armed with the valuable skills that make leveraging data easier. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to hire a data scientist with an MS in data science or a PhD in AI. It really just means that there are more learning opportunities and ways that the emerging workforce is able to work with an analytical approach or even leverage technology. And having teams that are slightly more technical or just being able to translate data a little bit more easily is really all organizations need. You don't need anything necessarily fancy. And finally, there have been many success cases to prove why data has been so valuable. And I really think that now, especially instilling confidence when making decisions, that's where the value can really lie. So just as an example, I've worked with customers before facing difficult decisions that could be extremely costly, and they want at least some assurance that the money they put into it will show a return on the investment. And with only 1 or 2 data points, we were able to help validate those decisions using historical information. So I think that's where it's also clear that if you get started now, you'll already be able to see the value of your investment almost immediately. One other thing that I really find interesting within prop tech is I believe we're at the very beginning of the prop tech journey, and especially data in the space. So when it comes to starting sooner rather than later, you can already begin to provide and prove the value to your organization right now with the available solutions. But it can really give you a huge competitive advantage. So rather than waiting for further disruption or being forced even to adopt these practices, you can kind of be ahead of this curve in the early adopters phase. And I also believe that in the adoption life cycle, so we're seeing CRE and prop tech, so that's the space that I'm in, but just prop tech in general is starting to rise, but eventually every prop tech company will need to be a data company as well. And that's just because the power of data, and it really does fuel things like artificial intelligence and making information systems smarter. So being kind of ahead of that and starting to understand the space in general, I think can provide a huge advantage. And not only are you leveraging tools to provide value and ROI, but also securing your place in the industry as an innovative leader who can respond and adapt well to change. So I think this is really a great time to get started. Now, another reason I believe it's also a good time is, so if you think about it, if you've ever used a service like Netflix or Amazon or anything that provides predictions or recommendations to you, and you've acted on those recommendations, you are already technically data-driven in the sense that you were leveraging data tools or processes in making a decision. Similarly, I believe that consumers and organizations are more accepting of data now because they see the value that it provides to them. And how I like to approach it is data, you should always use data with an end user in mind or the goal in mind, and always do things for their best interest. But similarly, consumers are more and more accepting of organizations utilizing the data because they see the value. And in a study, I wanted to learn this a little bit more from a real estate perspective. So I ran a study that we conducted to understand how employees in the workplace were open to data and even artificial intelligence in order to improve their workplace experience. And especially in Europe, we saw that the majority were open to this because they might have already seen examples of how it was used. Also things like GDPR and other protections for individuals instill some confidence. So more and more being able to provide that data and knowing that it's at least safe or utilized in the right way. allows users to be a little bit more confident. So if now is a good time to get started or to begin improving your data processes, I think that the best way to approach this is really starting small. And I've really always said to anyone starting small, because it can be extremely daunting, especially if you have large amounts of data to work with, or you don't have any data to work with. It can be extremely daunting where to start. So what I recommend is having a, even though it's small, at least something that's well publicized within the organization. And ultimately efforts to become data-driven, they really don't need to be big. It can be tiny changes or just a small project that proves value. I've seen the best approach to understand what the most pressing problems are. So, or identifying a problem, a goal, a strategic initiative within your organization that is really most important and central. And then starting to pull that goal apart through questions and sub-goals can already lead you on a path to leveraging data to help reach that goal. And that's usually where I see it best to start, because the data collection and analysis doesn't need to be big, but the impact can be really big. So as an example, you might want to increase revenue. And let's say that one way you're in a space where one way to do so is by reducing tenant churn. From here, so if reducing tenant churn might be your goal, you can start asking questions like, which of my tenants have provided the highest lifetime value and lowest churn rate? Then saying, what are the characteristics of those customers? Starting to think about, are there maybe trends that I can use to identify or predict future churn? And that way, we're already breaking down that goal, and all of those questions can be associated with different data points that we can use to leverage. And then from there, you really have a direction to work towards. And again, at the end of the day, it could be something small, like you do realize there are trends, or you do realize it could even be a big change that you're making based on that analysis and data, but it's a great starting point. And in the same vein, also starting by simply exploring data and understanding general trends. So this might be for already surprising insights, such as seasonal trends, identifying those high value tenants, clearly seeing when a project might go over budget. And all of that is just descriptive data. So that's just historical data, which is relatively easy to analyze and cut to identify trends. So I actually like to use this visualization to show the value of data projects. So you can really start with just descriptive, just answering the question, what has happened in the past, and using data for that. From here, just adding context and experience to analyze why it happened. So getting to diagnostic is saying, okay, we know what happened in the past, now let's pick apart why it might have happened. And already, again, that's providing huge amount of value. Beyond that, predictive models can be deployed. So that's really when you get more into artificial intelligence a bit and statistical modeling. But honestly, simple forecasting methods can even provide the same value and can be utilized and add significant value in the future. But ultimately then getting to prescriptive, which is essentially knowing what's going to happen in the future and what should we do about it based on this analysis. And that's ultimately when you reach the most value and can only be done when paired with context and that experience. So just as you might start small in the scope of a data pilot, starting small with one data set and analyzing it across all these different cuts, all these different ways of looking at it is really important. And once you truly get to know that data, you can begin expanding upon it once you fully understand and the context is kind of woven in. And then iterating many times or automating the process itself also proves quite important and valuable really quickly. So as mentioned earlier, it's really important to build a data-driven organization by encouraging everyone at all levels to utilize data. So highly publicized projects, or making sure everyone understands the ROI of that data investment. This could mean also challenging those within your organizations to leverage data themselves. It could really be just recommendations to show your evidence. So when you're making a recommendation and showing your evidence, or asking for data to support a decision or improve the confidence level. So saying, if you believe that, then at least show me some evidence so I can feel confident as well if we proceed that way. And it always really does come from the top, I believe. So starting from leadership, improving how and why data is important to the success of the business will really inspire others to take the same approach. So leaders should actively try to incorporate analysis at every stage of the decision-making process, whether big or small matters. And ultimately, in order to make your team successful, you also need to provide those resources. This can mean training programs, cultural change management, or even incentivizing those who have potential to go down that data route and upskill a bit. It's also important that individuals in the organization partake. So not just having a data team, but everyone, whether they're new to the organization, associate level, senior level management, all of that, I think it's really important to kind of lead by example and then encourage this within the organization. And again, it can be starting small. It doesn't need to be that everyone within the organization manages their own data projects. It could simply be that they're leveraging small data points within their day-to-day or with big decisions. And then also celebrate wins where data was used and proved its value. And I think that will happen a lot, especially if you are starting small, that you'll be able to see the return on investment and then be able to talk about it to inspire future projects. Now, some organizations are blessed in a way with too much data, but then that also can be a curse because simply narrowing down the valuable data and structuring it in a way can provide, it can really be the biggest challenge. So whether you are, and oftentimes that's called data rich, information poor, because you just have too much data to work with. In other cases, you may be data poor in the sense of you just don't have structured data. But either way, it all stems back to answering that core question that ties to your business goals and then finding the data from there. And there are many ways to gather data, and just being a little bit creative can be extremely valuable. So it might be legacy data, so business data that's proprietary to you that no other organization will have and just needs to be put in digital format, and just doing a data entry exercise already can sometimes provide your organization with immense value. Thankfully, there's also all of these technology solutions that you can leverage, either with raw data. They might be able to run queries for you and uncover your data, or they might provide insights and analytics out of the box. And that can be really valuable where you don't even need to do the analysis yourself. There's also plenty of online data sets, whether publicly available or subscriptions that you can purchase. So I've actually used something called Clearbit in the past, where with only a website of a company, I was able to enter all of our company leads and get hundreds of data points for every single company to enrich our data a little bit more. And then finally, gathering your own custom data can be hugely valuable because you are customizing the data collection process to suit that goal. So doing surveys or market research where you have the goal at the start and then are strategically collecting the data can be extremely valuable and then reutilized for the business for many years to come. And once you have the data, there are, again, many ways to actually analyze it. And this can come in the form of just, again, an out-of-the-box solution where the analysis is already done for you and it's just one of your technology solutions that you already have. It could also just be upskilling your employees to leverage the power of things like Excel and Google Sheets. So all of those spreadsheets have infinite capabilities as long as you're knowledgeable about them. If you do have a lot of data and you're doing reporting on a recurring basis, it might be time to also if you haven't already, invest in BI software. But this can be a very, very large project and very costly ultimately. So it's good to be clear with your goals when starting. And then finally, things like scripting languages. So if there is anyone that's technical within the organization that wants to and has domain expertise that wants to, again, upskill a little bit, so languages like R and Python have extensive analysis libraries, and they're sometimes the only tools used by analysts or data scientists. And either way, I think some of the key takeaways that I really have is, first of all, again, to start small. So don't get overwhelmed by, there's infinite capabilities, possibilities, data points, but start with high value, lower effort projects, and just try to identify what those are, because you will quickly see kind of the value and then be able to expand on that and learn about what your next project should be. And then building around business goals. So always starting with the goal and then identifying where you can extract the data from and analyze it to reach that goal. And also, again, don't go out of your way to hire anyone to tackle this challenge. I really believe in data translators. So people within your organization that have that domain expertise and are able to take some data and just structure it in a way to translate it into business value can be easy to do and something that can people can be trained on quite easily. And then finally, iterate and grow. So make sure that you're always able to continue to build on your data analysis. And finally, thank you for taking the time today. So I love talking about data. I know we didn't have a lot of time today, but would be happy to get in touch and connect and share experiences or learn from others. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Liza. That was perfect. So let's go to the Q&A session now. My first concern would be, and actually our first concern would be about the size of the company. You talked about different ways for collecting data. Mm-hmm. The idea is I want to ask you for your client list, but what kind of company are now ready for this new era of data?
So I think it really can be any company of any size, and it's just a matter of understanding so how much effort you're going to put into it. But if you're just putting in, for instance, if you have limited resources, but starting with very small data sets, and I mean extremely small data sets even, can prove valuable, and just understanding structuring in a way where you have all that historical context to work with moving forward is extremely valuable. So you don't need to be a large organization. You don't need to have a data team. You don't even need to have necessarily anyone that's super technical. I believe it can just start with having the motivation and the culture around being data-driven and evidence-based.
Great, thank you. I have a question about what kind of technology apps could be used in business centers and co-workings?
So in business centers and, sorry, co-working?
Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of those solutions, actually in the industry report I ran, I saw that in workplaces, especially co-working, that was where employees were most open to technology solutions because a lot of them had already experienced it as part of the experience. So there's plenty that's called tenant engagement software, for instance, and this is really starting to grow where you do see that employees are themselves receiving a lot of value out of the software in being able to engage with the community or optimize workspace, understand what's the best time to go into the office even based on historical trends, things like that. So it can be extremely valuable to the end users. And there's a whole space growing around that because of that value, especially from stemming from co-working spaces. But we see just as employees at home and in residential real estate, we do see a lot of personalization and prop tech emerging. So just as employees experience that at home, they want the same thing in the workplace. So it really is valuable to start using solutions like that.
Great, thank you very much. Another question is resources the best challenge in incorporate data in your business driving or in your business model?
Yeah, sorry, the biggest challenge?
Is resources the biggest challenge?
Yes.
The data into your business driving or into especially your business model?
Yeah, I think resources can be one of the biggest challenges. In a sense, but again, I think if you start small, it's not necessarily. When it comes to leveraging large amounts of data, resources is very important because you might need, for instance, a data engineer, you might need someone to optimize the data pipeline and deal with the large volumes of data coming in. So if you really are that driven to leverage high volume, high velocity data real time in order to make decisions or in order to build a product, resources, of course, will be one of the biggest challenges. But then if you are starting small, I don't think that it's necessarily resources. It does still mean that you need time to structure data and taking the time to analyze it. And sometimes that does mean upskilling and training employees. But yeah, ultimately, I think that's why leveraging technology and solutions that already do a lot of that work for you can be really valuable to get started.
Of course. Cannot see any other question for now. Maybe any hints for your side on the target of Office app. I mean the mainland target for now, or what is the core business, and how do you work for now during this crisis period?
Yeah, so that's something, especially because we provide a solution for office buildings, that is something that has been challenging for us, but we're actually doing things like ensuring that people are staying in touch and understanding what the company policies are, because it is a tenant engagement software. So being able to stay in touch and still kind of have that feeling of the office place. And we're also working on a returning to work project where we're providing insights and dashboards to help you monitor how the return to work is going, and then providing resources that make it a little bit safer to return to work. So having a better understanding of how many people are in the building versus the capacity, making sure that people feel safe and can report problems or dangerous situations, and then that you have fast turnaround time for those.
Great. I think I'll have to thank you a lot. That was really a great time to share with you. And, no, sorry, just at the last time. Our company is same data ready in big cities and capital versus small towns in province, or suburb.
So is there a difference between data readiness in a city versus
apparently smaller town or smaller cities?
Yeah, I think that could be where a resource, it could be a resource thing, but I've been to talks on leveraging data in like actually really small cities or rural areas where they were able to, because they're not dealing with large amounts of data, or because they were structuring like with one goal in mind at the end of the day, such as improving, I actually saw this was really interesting from my hometown, improving the effectiveness or on time of bus stops for children in schools, for instance. And that was their one goal that they wanted to solve. And it was easy for them to collect that data and then report on it. So again, if it's like narrow in scope, then it doesn't really necessarily mean that you have to be in a large area with millions and millions of data points. It could be that you have enough data to work with, even if you're in a smaller capacity.
Okay, actually, yeah, okay. So a bit joining your last answer, but the second part of the question would be about how the trends is actually differing between the different countries.
Yep. So one thing I've actually known, or I've seen, so I'm originally from North America, and then I've also seen kind of the differences, but when I've run studies, I found that Europe was a little bit more accepting and open to data and AI. And I think part of that has to do with GDPR and people feeling a little bit more safe and protected, and then also seeing the value of it. So I actually do have an industry report where we break it down by country even, but seeing in Europe that there are more differences, and we've seen that as technology has been able to progress a little bit faster in certain European countries than it has in North America. And then, yeah, there's plenty of information we can also find from country by country breakdown. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, I guess there is also a point about the legal way to use the data.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Liza. Hope to see you again, and I hope you all enjoyed this session with you with Office App, and have a good end of the day, depending where you are in the world, and see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.